there's a lot of advantages to remote work, and then there's some unforeseen things that pop up, right? Where you're like, this is actually significantly harder than people coming into the office.
If you've never made a hiring mistake, none of this will resonate for you. The ability for entrepreneurs to create amazing things has never been easier or more exciting. Like there are some people that don't want to be better tomorrow, or at least don't want to be better professionally tomorrow. But for them, the job is, clock in, clock out, yabba dabba do.
If we were all entrepreneurs, we wouldn't have anything in society today. Quick thank you to our sponsor, The Gents Place. What is The Gents Place? Imagine a country club meets speakeasy meets barbershop. If you're interested in owning and running a business that you can actually be proud of, one built with confidence, community, and consistency, this is worth a look. With top location performance exceeding $1.4 million in gross sales, they are at the cutting edge of their industry and franchising in 30 plus states across the U.S. If that lights a fire for you, go to tgpfranchising.com, complete the form, and book an intro call to learn more about owning your very own location of The Gents Place. All right, so welcome back to the Untrapped Entrepreneur Show. I've got Geoff McQueen here, and Geoff is a serial tech entrepreneur who, following his exit from his third exit last year, is working on his fourth. I mean, you are an absolute glutton for punishment. Team Score is his latest venture, a new kind of performance intelligence platform designed to make, and I've got to say it slow here, make remote work. Right.
Yes.
I said it just the right way so it makes sense, hopefully.
You did.
So he's got a very interesting company here that's dealing with remote workers, and I read some of the I don't know if you call them case studies or kind of profiles about Oscar. And who was the other Oscar, and who was the other one?
Who was the other character? I had to change the names for all of the right reasons.
Hold on. Oscar and Sally.
That's right.
Name. So I definitely urge you to learn about Oscar and Sally. We'll drop a link in the notes from Geoff's website about these remote workers that we've probably all, if we've had remote team members, we could probably all relate to. We've all had an Oscar and Sally before. But Geoff, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Glad to have you. And any guy that's starting and selling and starting again is a guy I want to talk to, because you're just as crazy as the rest of the people probably listening. So we can relate to you, my friend.
I hope so.
Okay, you have a West Texas accent. Everyone wants to know where that came from. But tell us a little bit about your journey from Australia to Colorado.
Yeah, so I grew up in a... Sorry to talk over you there, but I grew up in a place called Wollongong, which is about an hour south of Sydney. It's now very much a beachside college town, which sounds great, and it is. When I was growing up, though, it was going through the changes that you've seen in some of the Rust Belt states in the US, where the big industry of coal and steel was being automated or, in some cases, eliminated. And it made for a really interesting upbringing where, you read in economics textbooks about structural unemployment. We lived through it. It was wild. And it was interesting growing up that my dad, being a high school teacher, always wanted to be able to, I guess, get some better financial security for all of us kids. I'm one of 5 boys, so a lot of mouths to feed, really hungry mouths. And so he ended up doing some multi-level marketing, which meant all of us kids got exposed to entrepreneurship through these tape of the week and book of the month type of things, which was just so out of left field and the best thing ever. Even though the multi-level marketing worked as well as most of them do, which is not at all, the lessons were great, and I was able to take those forward. And it was going into my third year of college, realizing that that not only was I, studying an engineering degree, which I loved, but also could see down the track and down the future of being a middle manager at the equivalent of AT&T, and went, oh my God, no, get me out. So I reached down like a good pilot, pulled the eject handles, the canopy popped off metaphorically, and I jumped out with no savings, no degree, and started my first business, which was a digital agency, and have been on that journey ever since.
Marketing
Chronically
agency?
unemployable. Think of it more like a software development come marketing agency. So it was a little bit of both. We did a lot of website building, and at that time in the early to mid 2000s, a lot of it was very much marketing orientated because we didn't have, the WordPresses and the Webflows and all of those CMS tools available as easily. So we were doing a lot of building. When we did building of software that was all 100% web delivered, when that was still pretty unusual. So we got to do some really cool projects, and also a lot of, sort of fairly pedestrian but necessary ones.
Gotcha. So that was business number one.
Yep. That was
business number two.
One. Business number two is a little side spur, if you want to think of it like a train line. I got together with a friend who dropped out of university about the same time. We started a company called OmniDrive. It was basically Dropbox before Dropbox. And that was short-term, very exciting and successful. It's what first got me to Silicon Valley, got to know Mike Arrington from TechCrunch back when the blog was only 6 months old, plugged in right in the middle of Atherton and Menlo Park, getting to meet a lot of great people in the industry, pitching, sort of investors up and down Sand Hill Road at their invitation, given the initial traction we got with that product, which was a great experience. The business didn't work out, like a lot of startups don't, and I resolved that I would come back when I had something worth coming back for, which then became business number three, which we launched it with a different name, but it became Accello. The name was designed to be about accelerating a business and helping our small businesses to be able to go faster. And I built that up for about the next decade with teams in a dozen time zones, engineering, mostly on the other side of the Pacific, down under and a little bit in Manila, and product sales, support, back of house, all of those sorts of things were primarily here in the States.
Gotcha. What was the primary service offering there to entrepreneurs in that business?
Yeah, we basically ran all of their client work from quote to cash in one platform. So imagine you're an agency or a consultancy or an engineering firm. You needed to be able to know who your prospects were, which is kind of classic CRM. But then whatever you proposed or put together as an estimate needed to then convert into a project and get delivered. And a lot of the time, these businesses were doing fixed price stuff. So the business was taking all of the commercial risk. None of the 6-minute increments like lawyers. This was very much like, here's a 20 grand scope. And if that didn't get delivered on budget, these pro-serve businesses would often hit the wall because their net margin at the end of a year was usually only around 20%. So they could frankly only screw up 2 months of the year. And if they did any more than that, they generally didn't have a lot of capital backing. They'd already mortgaged their house to start the company if they even had a house. And so, when these guys made mistakes, took too long to bill their clients, those sorts of things, or had projects go over budget and not find out until too late, then basically they would have to fold up, and that would leave a lot of damage. People losing their jobs, projects half finished, lots of misery. And so I saw that, having run a similar business for number one, and decided to build software to automate it and streamline it from quote to cash for business number three.
Gotcha. I'm going to take a wild guess here because you and I don't know each other, but the business you're in now, TeamScore, deals with remote work. Maybe your experience in business three with all those remote workers led you to business four.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Ben. The genesis of Business 4 was started out, frankly, as a project. Post-exit, I was, I guess, at that first time in my life, able to take a breath, take some time, think about what I wanted to do next. And I looked at a few different things, but still that early stage entrepreneur thing is really what I love. It's passion for me. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure what that next business should be. But I knew there was something out there, and I knew whatever it was going to be was going to have to use the latest technology, not just from an architectural point of view, but certainly from an AI point of view. And so I initially was thinking, hey, I'll do some tutorials, maybe do some online classes, just really get myself back up to speed on the tech front, because spending a decade or more as the CEO and not much on the tools, I was rusty. So I was thinking, I'll send myself back to quote unquote school. And when you're doing that, most folks will have a similar experience, I'm sure, where they're like, I could either do the assessments or the tests or the practice that's given to me, or I could really learn it by putting it to work. Mm-hmm. And so I started out with TeamScore as a project, not even a full company in mindset. just to scratch an itch that I had running Excello, and wanted to use AI to see just how good it really was, because we also, I'm sure, have both seen that there's a lot of fluff out there and a lot of stuff that sounds good or looks good, and then you scratch the surface and you find out that it's all, a little bit shady. And so that's what I did, and it turned out, having validated it in just a few months solo with a front-end architecture I'd never used, a back-end architecture I'd never used, but knowing the problem deeply, was able to validate it, and then decided to get serious about it earlier this year. And that was when I then threw away everything that I had done as my prototypes and vibe code, because no one should keep any of that stuff ever for any reason. If you're listening, be very careful, don't do that. And then built it properly. And so, now it's got a real head of steam, and it's making a real impact for a lot of small and medium business owners out there, entrepreneurs that are trying to run a high-performance team and are struggling with the lack of visibility that's inherent that comes from having your people scattered everywhere. And that just makes it hard to be a great leader, to be honest.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned in some of your on the website and the case studies, examples, there's a lot of advantages to remote work, and then there's some unforeseen things that pop up, right? Where you're like, this is actually significantly harder than people coming into the office. Tell us about TeamScore, like what problem does it solve? And then like I have personal interests. I've got, I'm probably at 25 or 30 remote team members right now all over the world. So I have a bunch of questions just personal. I'm going to be very selfish in this interview and just get all my questions.
Probably not the only one. So I'm sure your audience is appreciating you taking one for the team there. So great question. The setup, if you will, was when I was running Excello, we had teams scattered around, but we were primarily focused on a couple of our offices. And then the pandemic happened and everything switched really quickly. And the challenge that we experienced, especially our managers, and I put myself in that category, managing the whole business, the challenge we had was that in an office setting, we had a lot of these non-verbal cues, a lot of this peripheral vision, as I think of it. So, you can kind of get the sense of who's struggling, who's going great, and you could actually be much more easily, with low friction, engaged actively as a manager. And that engagement could take the form of coaching, it could take the form of leadership, it could take the form of obviously being a sounding board when there's problems or challenges that folks bring to you, because that friction was a bit lower. And with the transition to remote, what we experienced was that managers who were already fairly heavily loaded from a hours per week perspective were then having to add on a lot of extra time for one-on-ones. And they were having one-on-ones before, but it was different, like a one-on-one that you'd have for 30 minutes with a direct report when you're in an office would be a different tone, because you were kind of already had that baseline or that pulse of interaction a lot through the week or the, 2 weeks between these meetings. What we found is that we were having to then set up calls just to do, the basics. Where are we up to? Status update type stuff. And it meant then either making more time for coaching, but when you're dealing with folks that are already redlining, that time didn't often happen. And so these managers lost their peripheral vision. They struggled to get it back without being a tyrant. And who wants to work for that guy or girl who schedules a 5 o'clock Friday afternoon call just to make sure you're at your computer, right?
Yeah.
Who wants to work for that manager who pings you on Slack because your light isn't green at 9:02 in the morning? Who wants to work for that person? So the tyrant approach was a terrible idea. The kind of hope for the best, laissez-faire, kumbaya approach, which is where most folks end up, isn't great either, unless you're perfect at hiring. If you've never made a hiring mistake, none of this will resonate for you. But if you've ever made a hiring mistake, you'll know that you just can't hope for the best, because hope isn't a strategy. And the third option was installing this spyware type technology that would go onto everyone's computer and captures keystrokes and mouse movements and screenshots, and in some cases even lets folks remotely turn on the camera and the microphone on your laptop. Just creepy. Yeah. And so I looked at those three choices, and they were all bad choices, right? None of them are viable. None of them lead to a successful, high-performing culture and team. And so that's why I created TeamScore, was to solve it with a fourth approach, which is to give managers back peripheral vision that doesn't involve a single piece of spyware. uses AI to summarize based on the logs of what people have been working on in their Google Workspace or Office 365 or one of the other almost dozen products we integrate with now. And it just gives you that daily insight of what's going on as a manager. So then you get back your peripheral vision. And if something doesn't look quite right, you can say something and engage constructively like a manager, as opposed to a cop or, a kumbaya hope for the best kind of person.
So is this a software installed on every remote team member's computer?
Absolutely
Is that how that works?
not. That's the critical point. It does not touch any of the devices of any of your team members, because that to me was the deal breaker. Like when I was looking at it in my last company and I looked at, there's like 20 of these products that are all basically variations of the same theme, right? Mm-hmm. Install on the device, report back to the mothership. And I was like, we might have some performance issues with 20-ish% of the individuals in the org that frankly came of age after remote was a thing, didn't maybe kind of get the indoctrination that happens early in someone's career, and figured if no one's telling me I'm doing the wrong thing, then I can just keep doing 2 hours a day and hope for the best, right? And so I thought culturally, rolling out some spyware, this agent stuff that lives on everyone's devices, to identify what I probably already had a hunch of about often it's about a quarter of folks is what I've heard from other entrepreneurs that have got a problem. And in the process of rolling it out to identify for sure that there's 20 to 30% of people have got a challenge that needs to be addressed. And in the process, taking my 40 to 50% of high performers and telling them, I don't trust you at all. I'm going to install spyware that captures screenshots. Like if you're employing people in a role that is creative, that has any level of agency and passion, like the last thing you want to do is install spyware. Yeah. I mean, the only person who's happy about you doing that is Karl Marx. Talk about an adversarial culture, right? Mm-hmm. So I refused to do that because I knew that our best performers would stop working as hard. Their care or their passion would melt away because they felt like they were just being watched in some narky way. And so I was like, that's a bad choice. I'm not doing that. But the technology to do it the right way and just have little checkpoints and understanding without being involved in someone's device didn't exist. That's why I built TeamScore.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way to say, I trust you, but I'm going to put this software on your device that tracks everything you do.
Totally, man.
There's no way to do both of those at the same time, and they're both true.
The other one that was really eye-opening too, Ben, is when folks do install that stuff, and there's a lot of bigger companies, corporations that do it for risk management in case, something really bad happens. And I get that mentality. But what happens is they end up locking that software and the insights away to a very, very small group of people because they are so invasive. Mm-hmm. And it means that the manager or the supervisor who needs to have the understanding, that visibility back, that peripheral vision, they don't get it. Like, even if you install the spyware, the manager who actually wants to know, like high level, what's going on, isn't given access to it because it's too invasive. And HR looks at it and goes, if we give this to every manager and it can turn on a webcam, that's just, and people are working from home in their bedrooms, like lawsuit alert, terrible idea. So even when folks do go to the effort of installing this stuff, it doesn't actually get used to build a high performance culture or to be a better manager or coach. It just sits there like some insurance policy or doomsday machine, which is a waste of time, money, and still ends up with the feeling of you're being spied upon. So there's no win.
There's no win. Well, this will really make you cringe. This is a recent story, right? From last week. You mentioned that one of the traps was maintaining a high performance culture as you scale, and especially in a remote environment. So just last week, and I'll be very careful not to name names, a very large global organization, founders probably billionaire, recently wanted to install cameras in all of these remote locations, across the globe, with AI tracking that will tell if that person's in the seat or not in the office.
Right.
And it tracks like the percentage of time that they're in the seat. They're sitting in the seat in front of the computer. And HR kind of struck that down from the founder and said, we can't really do that. And we're going to talk to some of our directors. And of course, nobody liked it. And so the compromise was installation of an iPad at the office where people have to hit the button when they come in and hit the button when they leave the office, whether they're going to the bathroom or they're going to the meeting, and making a selection on like the reason why they're passing by the iPad. And this is a large, very successful organization.
Oh, no.
And I'm listening to this story and I'm thinking it's year 2025 going on 2026 as a very successful person. I couldn't even believe that this is happening right now.
It's funny you should say that, Ben. Like the horror stories I've heard about these return to office mandates is really quite alarming when you think about, like, people have forgotten why the business exists. Like, what's its purpose and who are the key criteria, who are the key kind of contributors to the success of that mission. And I kind of get it emotionally too, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics does this survey. They've been doing it for over 20 years now. Usually it's released in the summer, where the BLS will survey a bunch of people. I'm talking thousands and thousands and thousands every year. And they will keep a very accurate log or diary of their activities over the course of a day. And it's used for all sorts of things, like, travel distances and all sorts of things. Like, you can imagine it's a super valuable thing for understanding what's going on across a population. And part of that is, when are you working and where are you working from? And look, there's some people who aren't working, or they're studying, or they're retired. But what we did was we took the raw data, which you can get from bls.gov. It's called the American Time Use Survey. And we downloaded the raw data, and we then did analysis across it. And what we found is that the average remote person is working 2.6 hours a day less than the average in-office person. And this is, statistically significant government data. This isn't just some self-reported, like, Survey Monkey in the potential you might get a gift card type nonsense. And the reason, and the number of times I've talked to people who are working remote, that they hear that and you can just see them getting angry, because they're like, I'm working as hard as I've ever worked. In fact, I work harder because I'm not commuting. And I'm working harder because I'm not getting distracted by 10 different colleagues with minor issues. And I'm able to focus. Like, this is better. This remote thing is flat out better. And I also like it more. I don't commute. I get to pick the kids up. Like, there's a lot of reasons that it's an improvement. And they get so angry. And then what we did was we sliced the data further. And we realized that average of over 2 hours a day, that is less if you're remote, turns out it's because of bifurcation. So most people are working as hard as they've ever worked. But there is a small number, depending on the demographics in the industry, around 20%, that are fake working from home. These are the folks that have got multiple full-time jobs. These are the folks that are quiet quitting. We hear about it, we read about it, it's in the zeitgeist. Well, it's also in the data. And it's that group that aren't working that drag the average down. And if you're an executive who doesn't have visibility into what's really going on, then you're left realizing that performance isn't where it needs to be. Our competitors armed with AI are coming to eat our lunch. We need to be better. We need to be high performing. We've lost a step over the past 5 years. And so they throw the baby out with the bathwater and they enforce a return to office mandate. They know they're going to see 20 to 30% attrition without having to pay anyone's severance. So the accountants are happy. And it's just like, it's so disgusting to see when it's being done for those reasons. There are good reasons too, but frankly, a lot of it is because remote isn't working for the employer. And largely it's because those employers and their managers haven't worked out how to be good managers in a remote environment for the reasons we've already talked about.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you 2 examples, personal examples for me.
Yeah.
And let me know if the the software and what you guys offer is a solve for this, or if you just have some advice.
Yeah, sure.
In general. So, because I think a lot of people have remote workers and probably have similar experiences.
Yeah.
Team member number one situation is started out great, graphic designer.
Yep.
Doing some amazing work. And then it got to a point in the employment with this team member where it was, hey, that's not part of my job. Like, that's not my job description, or this is over and above what I thought I would be doing here. Mm-hmm. And we initially thought, well, this is probably maybe an attitudinal issue, maybe something personal in his life. But it continued to come up. Hey, could you, I know this is last minute. I know we usually have like a 1 week turnaround, but they really need it in 3 days.
Yeah.
And it was consistent, like, well, I mean, I need a week. Like, I don't know why they're not giving me a week. Hey, well, it's just business, right? It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So the manager of this person came to me and I said, he's got another job.
Yeah, it feels like they're juggling too many balls.
That's what's going on, because he was trying to put really like bright lines around. I get off at 5 p.m. I start here. I don't take on more than the job description says.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what it was. So we had to let the team member go. And sure enough, it was, well, that's fine because I already have other things that I'm doing. And we're like, I knew it.
Yeah.
Is there any way to find out sooner? Any way to kind of figure out if that's going on? Because this was over the course of several months. We could have saved a lot of time if we would just had known what was really going on.
That's the peripheral vision again, man. Like, imagine you're in an office. And I'm not saying this to be in praise of the office, but just as a contrast, right? So imagine you're in the office and someone rolls in at 11 and then they leave at 2. And this isn't someone who's in field sales, right? This is like someone who's a graphic designer, for example, to pick your point there. The manager, like, even as they roll in at 11, is like, hey, Billy, what's going on, man? Is everything all right? Thinking Billy might say, oh, yeah, I had car trouble, I had the doctor's appointment, sorry I didn't text you, I'll do that in the future. But in a remote way, there's none of that peripheral vision, so you don't catch things early that could be easily addressed with setting clear expectations or being an active and competent manager. We're not asking for a lot here. But if you can't see it, you can't do it. Mm-hmm. And if you also look at the rate of change in the labor market for every year that goes by, I think the data is something like 2 to 3% of the labor market every year is new blood, and 2 to 3% retire or move out of the labor market. Well, we've been doing this for 5 and a bit years now. So you're dealing with 15-ish% of the labor market that never worked kind of the quote-unquote old way. And so you can't also assume any expectations of what is normal, what is acceptable, what is going to result in you being a successful, promoted member of the team here. So, with the product, what it does is it uses the log file data of things like when they log into, Google Workspace, or if they're in a sales role, if they're, updating a record in HubSpot, or if they're a developer when they commit code to GitHub. What about Asana? I'm staring at my Asana right now. Do you guys integrate? We haven't got Asana yet. We do have Basecamp. Okay. We haven't got Asana just yet. But there's a lot. I want to try and have 50 of these platforms by the end of next year. So the short answer is you pull in that log file data of when things are happening, and then it shows you visually on a screen just with clear little colored lines across the course of somebody's day, like a bar. And if you go to teamscore.io, we've got a screenshot right in the middle there on the homepage. You'll get it straight away. And with that visibility, which we then send every morning at 7 a.m. to a manager for all of their team, their direct reports, they get to see that graphic for the day before, for everyone who reports to them via Slack or via email. And they can just sort of easily see, and you can see where those gaps are, and you can see where things aren't happening. You can also see when people are redlining or working too hard. Why are they online at 5 a.m. and they're still working at 10 p.m.? I know they're trying to impress me here, but I don't want to, if they end up having their marriage break up because they're redlining, that's going to have a bigger impact on their life. And also, it's not going to help them as a team member. Like, let's get ahead of this. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, I could see that. So there's tools that the graphic designer is using. There's software tools they have access to, and you're picking up some of that activity data there to look for anomalies, like if they're supposed to be at work from 8 to 5 and they're a graphic designer and they have, Adobe, whatever, Photoshop, whatever it is, and don't log into that until 2 p.m. or at all that day. That's kind of what else were you doing with your time?
Yeah, pretty much. And that aspect of seeing the gaps is a lot like if you're a manager and someone rolls in at 11 a.m. Doesn't mean that, that's the problem when people only find out about things after they've been going on for months. The result is just so traumatic for everyone. Whereas a manager who sees someone rolling at 11 is like, hey, is everything all right? It's a quick, casual conversation. There's no HR involvement. There's no escalation of the CEO. There's no termination unless it's endemic. You just go, hey, is everything all right? Oh, this is what happened. All right, next time, make sure you text me, man. I just need to know what's going on. Okay, yeah, that's cool, no problem. And then you get on with your day and it doesn't happen again. Whereas if you've got these gaps online and you don't have visibility, then you don't know and you start to wonder what's going on here, and you start to guess and you hypothesize and you make assumptions, making an ass out of you and me, as they say. Whereas with TeamScore, you see this gap and you can say, hey, is everything all right?
You mentioned in this Oscar example too, it's so important to catch things early. Is like he was like, well, no one's looking, so I'm going to just see what I can get away with, and then I'm going to see what I can get away with even more, and then I'm going to start telling people,
tell your peers
about it, right?
Bragging about it.
Hey, man, you don't even show up at 8. They don't even know if you sleep in. Show up at 11. They don't know, or they don't care. If they care, then they'd say something. Exactly.
That kind of, and for a lot of folks who are come up through the standardized testing, everything constantly being tested, schooling of really anyone who's probably under 30, maybe even older, they've had so much constant feedback, micromanaging feedback through their schooling, that when they join a workplace and their manager isn't giving them feedback that they're slipping or they're missing or they're not performing enough, then they will go, well, unless there's a problem, they'll tell me if there's a problem. Otherwise, I'll just go out on a Thursday night, get hammered, roll out of bed at 11 on a Friday, and then go up the mountains and ski, and I'll just answer a couple of Slack messages, and then they get so comfortable they tell their colleagues what they're doing. And that's the really corrosive part that I wrote about in that blog post about Oscar and Sally. Because what happens is your Sally A player, who's been fantastic, sees enough examples of people like Oscar that are being lazy and not getting fired for what seems gratuitous, but also Sally's not going to, tell the boss that what Oscar's doing, because she's like, I can't unsee what I saw, but also I don't want to be that person who goes around and tells on people. I got told from a young age that's not okay.
Yeah.
And so then gradually your A performer Sally starts to take her foot off the gas, starts to not give a damn anymore. And next thing you know, your A players have dropped back to be B and C players, and it's really corrosive. And in a world full of Slack direct messages and remote team members, your ability as a manager and a leader to kind of counterbalance some of those, natural things that happen in any population. No one's perfect, but your ability to do anything about it just gets really, really, really hard, to the point of spiraling out of control.
It's hard to turn those team members around. You have a good team. Maybe Oscar was never a good fit, should never been hired. If you had the right tools, you would have found out in the first week. But then you lose someone like Sally, who was a good team member turned bad. And it's hard to turn around again. She already developed all of these habits and resentment over the course of time.
It turned out, and that was sort of the specific genesis for TeamScore. So Sally, really A player, and while she'd taken her foot off the gas and started to fall into bad habits, still took pride in being an A player, and frankly was sort of coasting on that reputation, I'd say, and thought she could continue to wing it. And what happened was I, being a sort of an engineer by background, admittedly dropout, but still, was able to pull the log files as if I was operating a security consulting practice, because all these log files are already there. Everyone using cloud software has already got these files or this data. It exists so if you get hacked, the security people at Mandiant or other places can come in and work out what the bad guy saw, right? So they're really detailed. IP addresses, timestamps, immutable type, awesome stuff. But they're super, super impenetrable for the average person to make sense of. And so I ended up writing some very simple translations to be able to convert them into a spreadsheet so then I could share them with the VP and the director of Sally and show clearly that when Sally said she was working from home, she wasn't. And so they sat down to have your classic 30-day PIP conversation, performance improvement plan conversation. But what they were able to say, because they had the data, is they were able to say, Sally, subjectively, your performance has slipped. Your missing deadlines, the work you're turning in, frankly, looks half-assed. But we can see objectively with this data that you're only working half a week. And so at this point, we still believe, because we've seen you be awesome, that you can be awesome. And the only thing that needs to happen is you have to choose to make an effort again. And only you can make that choice. But we can see with the data that you stopped making an effort and then you started to really underperform. So it's up to you whether or not you want to keep a job here. If you don't start making an effort, you're gone. But we'll give you a chance because we can see that it's something you could choose to change. And she changed it pretty much overnight. Because to your point about expectations, she thought it was okay to be half-assing it and not working from home and Netflix and chill. And then once it was called out, she's like, okay, right, jig's up. Yeah. And she turned it around.
By the way, Oscar, we fired Oscar right before this meeting.
Oscar went a while before that, actually. Yeah. The chronology doesn't quite overlap.
Because that's usually when you have a conversation of accountability, right? No one is being held accountable. Then it's like, well, but what about Oscar, right? Like, Oscar's gone. And that tends to become real for people. Like, okay, well, if Oscar's gone, maybe I'll get it right. Okay, situation 2. I need some feedback on. Team member recently, great team member, getting promoted, working their way up, taking on more responsibility, great attitude, still doing great. But then manager finds out this team member has a side business, a side hustle that they've started, which is, I think, generally probably now accepted. It's fine from employer. Like you're doing yoga teaching, you're doing this, you're selling whatever. But this side business happens to be looks actually pretty, being pretty aggressive about building the business. Doesn't look like just like any side bit. And it actually is based on everything that this team member is learning. So it's like, the company's making all of these investments, teaching them things, and then they're like taking that out and selling that as a service, right? So, but there's nothing wrong necessarily right now with this team member, but with this additional information, managers trying to figure out, like, I was going to promote this person. Seem like they're on the right track. A little bit harder maybe because you don't have control of their computer. We've already decided we don't want control of their computer. We're not putting anything on their device. Is it better for us to just not know that because the performance is good here? Do I want to find a software that looks at other things that are going on in their life? Because if we didn't know that, no problem. But it is an early indicator potentially that they may be on their way out. So any advice or thoughts around that type of situation?
It's really hard. I mean, smart creatives, as they described it in the How Google Works book, are going to leave, right? They're ambitious. It's going to happen. And I think the idea that you could somehow put up fences and maybe guard towers and searchlights to try and keep everyone, and also have them highly motivated and have them be, just giving their energy and their passion while someone's standing there at a guard tower with a searchlight is pretty crazy to imagine, right? It's just not going to happen. So I think it was very, sort of situational. Definitely for anyone who's employing people, make sure your employment contracts are dialed in. It's easier than ever now, thankfully, with a combination of, standard stuff that's been around a while, like your LegalZooms, to obviously now ChatGPT is better than probably 80% of lawyers out there.
Yeah.
And so make sure you've got that clear, because things like intellectual property, non-solicitation, non-compete, these are real issues and they really do matter. But I think it's hard to know the right way to go in that specific situation. It may be that, again, having a direct, straight up conversation, be like, hey, notice you're working on your side hustle. It's not affecting your work. I can still see you're working hard. You're just choosing to do that instead of working in your garden or restoring a car or looking after a sick parent. Like, there's lots of things that we do in our lives that are outside of work, right? So instead of assuming that that's just, beyond the pale, instead being like, hey, you're pretty entrepreneurial, you got some hustle. What about, do you really want to go out and do this thing on your own? Or are you frankly not that challenged and you're ambitious? And maybe we create a bit of a skunkworks special project thing that is aligned with your passions. And we then give you resources and autonomy and recognition. And you can actually create that success within the quote unquote four walls of the organization. So I think it's very circumstance specific. But I wouldn't say that, it's something to really try and have a restrictive or punitive mentality about, unless it starts to cross over into areas of using company information, client records, any of that kind of stuff. That's internal espionage. That's insider risk. That's different than hustle and entrepreneurship. What's
your personal opinion on that, just as a founder, CEO of the company? Like, when you onboard team members and you're talking about what they do outside of your work, do you generally say, hey, we encourage and are okay with side hustles, doing some extra stuff here or there? Do you not talk about it at all, or do you discourage it? Because, the old school is, you got one job, I don't want you doing anything else. If anything's distracting you from this, you're fired. That's like the one the story I was telling you about from last week.
Yeah.
I think that's probably archaic, but how do you address that, and what are your personal feelings as for some of your team members?
So I think, firstly, there's going to be some low percentage, probably single digit, that are truly entrepreneurial folks that are self-starting and wanting to do this stuff. So just answering for myself, in terms of a recruiting and induction and onboarding process, I wouldn't be bringing it up at all as a blanket thing, just because it's irrelevant for 90+% of the folks you're talking to. And if you tell those 90% of people that you encourage it, what you're implicitly saying is, and if you want to succeed around here, you're going to start to come up with these ideas and start to pursue them. And that's going to be really fish out of water for something like 90% of the people in the world, right? So I wouldn't be doing that. If I had folks that wanted to do that, the general vibe I would have is cautiously embracing it. And the reason I say that is, one of the biggest challenges that all of us have is we only see the world through the eyes that we have and the ears that we have. It's a lot of hard work, and it's actually one of the most important leadership characteristics, is the ability to think from someone else's perspective and really take the time and energy to imagine yourself in their shoes. But even then, you're still projecting based on your own experiences. Where I think that insight is useful to your example or your hypothetical there is, if you've got someone who's actually trying to side hustle and build something. Maybe it's an e-commerce brand that they're able to do in their spare time. Maybe it's their, I got a buddy who's started a cold press juicing company and is hustling his way through that. And frankly, as their entrepreneur and leader, I love it.
Yeah, I do too.
Because that way they're actually feeling the pain and the challenges and the uncertainty of being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And so, if that's how they're spending their Saturdays or their nights, obviously if it starts to impact their work or have other issues, then that's a different conversation. But if it's how they're choosing to spend their time instead of binging Netflix, I'm all for it. And I'll actually take the time to then say, how's this going? Check in every month or so. How's progress? How are you going? Is it top of funnel that's a challenge for you? Or have you got drama with suppliers? What's going on? And almost be a bit of a coach or mentor to them if they're open to it. Because it makes them more appreciate everything that's going on inside the organization and the leadership, because they're actually feeling it themselves. They're not the other side of the table, so to speak.
That's the path I've taken numerous times. I've had people open their own barbershops, ice cream shops, yogurt shops, consumer packaged goods companies. And I don't know. I have to kind of go back and do an autopsy. I don't know how I created the environment that made them comfortable talking to me about it, but I did something that made people comfortable saying, hey, I've kind of started this thing, and I know you know where to order labels and packaging and everything. Yeah. They felt comfortable enough doing that. And then I helped them design their logo. I helped introduce them to package suppliers. I'm cheering them on, and I retain them as a team member. And in some cases, other cases, they've moved on, and I'm cheering for them. And one bought a yogurt shop and then sold the yogurt shop and bought an ice cream shop after that.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, so for me, I think my ethos is like, if I can have every team member leave better than when they started, that allows me personally to go to sleep at night not having any regrets.
Yes.
And whether they stay with me or not, that they're constantly getting better. Hey, I've been with the company 5 years, and I'm better than when I started, or I just left the company 10 years later, and thank God I went through that whole experience. I'm better than when I started. I think that's for me probably what comes out to my team members is like, that's all I really care about.
Yeah. And I think I'd agree with that. Where I think I had some reflections when I had the first time to like stop and take stock and think post-exit on the last company was, I think I probably tried mentally to be too much that way, Ben. Because I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of us try and make the impossible, or at least the improbable, a reality. That's why I often joke to friends like, you know, be careful dating an entrepreneur. Not just because they're busy and distracted, but because they tend to be very tenacious and not give up. And the thing about dating is, you know, you're trying to see if it's a good fit, and there's benefits in realizing it's not and moving on to, you know, try something else. Whereas entrepreneurs, we tend to be a little bit too dogged, and that can be bad.
We're so optimistic too. Like everything's going to work
optimistic,
out.
And we can fix this. We can get this to work, you know. And I think that same mentality can be a bit challenging if the driver of having someone be better tomorrow or next week or next month or on their way out the door in X years' time is coming from you as the entrepreneur and the leader. You want to encourage that. You want to support it. You want to try and have that desire. But I don't think we can create that desire. And I think in the past, some of the mistakes I've made have been continually trying to apply make the impossible possible through own, you know, motivations and purpose without stopping and asking the deeper question of like, is this something they want? Like there are some people that don't want to be better tomorrow, or at least don't want to be better professionally tomorrow. They might want to be a better little league coach, but for them, the job is, you know, clock in, clock out, yabba dabba do. And that's okay too. Like the world still needs bus drivers. It's not like a value judgment, but I think when, as an entrepreneur or a leader, I've tried to like make it as universal as possible to kind of have that growth or that improvement. It doesn't work, man. It's got to be a pull, not a push. You can't push a rope.
Yeah, that's so true, man. I think that's a huge trap for the perpetually optimistic, people pleasing, servant leader entrepreneur, like that profile. They want for everybody what they have. They want what they want, and not everybody wants to run a business. Very few do. Want to own a business, want to take out a loan, want to risk everything, want to work, eat what they kill. There's a lot of people. They're just like, hey, man, I just want Saturdays off. You know, that's what I'm working towards, is Saturdays off.
Nothing wrong with that. It's not a value judgment, but again,
it's needed. It's necessary to make it all work, right?
Totally. Like, we need variety. You know, a species needs that variety.
We could probably talk a whole episode about the entrepreneurs that are going out there saying, you know, entrepreneurs make everything work and entrepreneurs are driving everything. And we could probably talk a whole episode about the exact opposite of without, you know, all of these people. If we were all entrepreneurs, we wouldn't have anything in society today, right? Like we need the bus driver, the trash collector, the hairstylist, the bookkeeper, like God kind of made everything completely complementary in every way for us to fit together. Yeah. But I try to thank my team members as much as possible. Like, I couldn't do this without you, and that's not a platitude. Like, literally,
no. It's a statement of fact.
It's a fact, and there's a lot more team members than there are business owners. So, like that whole thing needs to work. That's what I love about Team Score. I'm going to be inquiring, by the way, just because we have so many remote team members. But that's what I love about what you're doing is like it is making all of that work for all of these team members that are working remotely that just need maybe some accountability, some expectation management. The owner needs some visibility. You're catching things early. Before they get out of control. So I love what you're doing, and thanks, I appreciate you coming on, Geoff. I'm going to open it up here just the last 30 seconds. Let us know how we can get in touch with you. Website, email. I don't know if you're on LinkedIn, Twitter, X, TikTok. How do you want us to follow you, man?
So check out TeamScore at teamscore.io. So check it out there. It's a free product. It's freemium, like a lot of them. So you can get going free of charge. It's 3 clicks to install. No change management. You basically just click auth onto Google or Office 365, and then you basically have insights within a few minutes that can look back a month, between 1 and 4 months. So like if you're even curious hearing this, it costs you nothing. Go to teamscore.io, hit sign up, and go through that little like 3-click process, and you're up and running. In terms of my personal stuff, I've been putting a lot of more effort into LinkedIn lately. So if you want to follow along, one of the things about TeamScore was, as I said at the start of the episode, sort of scratched my own itch and wanted to see what the AI could and couldn't do. And I've been kind of blogging and sharing about that on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Geoff, spelt Geoff McQueen, spelt the English way, I guess. So check it out there, and you'll be able to find me and be able to follow along too. Just posted some stuff about how I was able to effectively do 3 months worth of work in just a couple of weeks using some great frameworks from authors like Alison Letary around go-to-market and building a standout startup, which is her book. But what I did is I took her template and workbook, and then with ChatGPT in particular, but also a bit of Claude, really made amazing progress in a short amount of time. And so I'm sharing those insights as well, because I think the ability for entrepreneurs, and this is now beating their drum big time, the ability for entrepreneurs to create amazing things has never been easier or more exciting. The ability to be 5 or 10 times as effective from a headcount point of view or efficient is like nothing I've ever seen before. And what I keep hearing from the big end of town, because I'm part of YPO, I'm in all these different private webinars with big company CEOs and presidents. And the constant thing I'm hearing is them saying, change management. We cannot get our people to adopt this. We cannot change the organization. The organization's so focused on its existence and how it's always done things that we cannot affect change. And when I hear that, I think this is fantastic for anyone who's trying to build an ambitious, high-growth company, no matter your industry, because you have this leveling of the playing field that only comes around once every couple of generations. Maybe the internet did it. Certainly electricity did it, but it's special. So get on board, and if you want to follow along, I'm sharing in the interest of paying it forward and part of mentoring a couple of dozen companies a year in the startup space, sharing the insights. So hopefully that's useful for folks as well on LinkedIn.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm a follower on LinkedIn, so I'll keep up with your content. All right, buddy. Thanks, Geoff, and until next time, guys. Thank you so much.